In a realm of celestial light, a select group of angels known as the Watchers were chosen for a divine purpose. Tasked with guiding humanity, they were powerful guardians, assigned with the responsibility of observing the mortal world. A group of 200 Watcher angels stood at the edge of heaven, looking down at earth. At first, they watched with curiosity, fascinated by the life below. But soon, their eyes were drawn to the beauty of human women. Their bright smiles and graceful movements stirred something deep inside the angels. What began as innocent admiration quickly turned into a powerful desire. As they lingered, enchanted by the charm of these women, dark thoughts began to creep into their hearts. Each angel felt captivated, struggling with his growing longing. The temptation grew stronger, and the line between their duty and desire blurred. With each passing moment, their resolve weakened, and the allure of having a lustful relationship with the daughters of men became irresistible. What began as mere curiosity soon spiraled into a rebellion that would shake the very foundations of heaven and earth. As they descended into the world of humans, chaos erupted and the delicate balance of creation trembled. The very essence of their rebellion sparked a darkness that would forever change the fate of both heaven and earth. What drove these angels to forsake their divine roles? What secrets lay hidden in their hearts? What were the consequences? What became their fate? This is a tale of ambition, rebellion, and the heavy price of desire. Before we move on, if you're passionate about studying scriptures and uncovering their hidden meanings, make sure to subscribe. Your support helps us bring these profound teachings to light. Now, let's dive into today's video. In the beginning, God created heaven and earth. He then made man in his own image. And God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, and every living thing that moves upon the earth." Genesis 1 verses 28 to 29. In the vastness of heaven, a special group of angels watches over all nations. Known as Watchers, these celestial beings are sent to earth to observe the lives of humans. Their role is important and filled with purpose. Scripture reveals that these heavenly watchers are deeply interested in our world. Ezekiel 1 verses 15 to 20 describes their powerful presence, while 1 Peter 1 verse 12 shows how even angels are captivated by the unfolding stories of our lives. They don't just watch. At times, they intervene, stepping in to help guide or protect us. A striking example of a watcher's influence is found in the book of Daniel. King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon experiences a troubling dream that disturbs him. In this dream, a holy watcher appears, delivering a serious message of judgment. The watcher describes a great tree, symbolizing the king's power, which is destined to be cut down. This warning reveals the consequences of pride and the importance of humility. You might wonder why the Bible uses the term watcher instead of simply calling these beings angels. The word angel, Hebrew, malak, emphasizes their role as messengers, bringing God's word to people. In contrast, watcher, Hebrew, ir, highlights their role as observers, reporting back to God about what they see in the world. For King Nebuchadnezzar, the realization that he, despite being a Gentile, is under the watchful eye of the God of Israel is truly striking. This powerful truth becomes evident in the concluding verse of the passage. The sentence is by the decree of the watchers, the decision by the word of the holy ones, to the end that the living may know that the Most High rules the kingdom of men and gives it to whom he will, and sets over it the lowliest of men. This statement confirms the existence of angels tasked with observing humanity. These watchers possess the authority to intervene in human affairs, guided by the will of God. The Hebrew term translated as watcher in Daniel 4 stems from a root meaning wakeful one. This can refer to a watcher, sentinel, or guardian, according to the International Standard Bible Encyclopedia. Watcher angels are servants of God who have been granted a unique authority to proclaim God's decrees. They form a heavenly council, listening to God's commands and acting as divine messengers, delivering his revelations to humanity. According to the Bible, this is how the rebellion of a group of 200 watchers started. Genesis 6 verses 1 to 2. And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. What happened after that? Genesis 6 verses 4 to 5. There were giants in the earth in those days. And also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown. And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. The decision made by the sons of men led to the birth of something entirely unexpected, a departure from God's original plan for humanity and the earth. The Nephilim, often described in the Bible as the heroes of old, but who are these mysterious sons of God? There are three main views regarding their identity. Fallen angels. Some believe the sons of God were fallen angels, powerful human rulers. Others argue they were mighty human leaders, godly descendants of Seth. The third view suggests they were the righteous descendants of Seth intermingling with the wicked descendants of Cain. The first theory gained some support from the Old Testament, where the phrase sons of God typically refers to angels, as seen in Job 1 verse 6, 2 verse 1, 38:7. However, a challenge to this view arises from Matthew 22 verse 30, which states that angels do not marry. The Bible does not imply that angels have gender or the ability to reproduce. The other two views do not present this problem, but still have weaknesses. The second and third theories struggle to explain why ordinary humans would produce giants or heroes of old. Moreover, if powerful human rulers or descendants of Seth marrying ordinary women was the issue, why would God decide to flood the earth? Genesis 6 verses 5 to 7. Up until that point, there was no divine prohibition against such unions. The severe judgment described in Genesis seems more justifiable if linked to the unnatural relationships between fallen angels and human females. Although the first view presents an interesting contradiction. Claiming angels are sexless while suggesting they procreate with humans, it remains plausible. Angels are spiritual beings, Hebrews 1 verse 14, but can take on human form, Mark 16 verse 5. For instance, the men of Sodom wanted to engage in sexual acts with the angels visiting Lot, Genesis 19 verses 1 to 5. This suggests that angels might be capable of mimicking human physicality, including sexuality. But why don't fallen angels do this more often? It appears that God has imprisoned the fallen angels who committed this sin to deter others from following their lead, Jude 6. Early Hebrew interpreters and various ancient texts largely support the view that the sons of God mentioned in Genesis 6 verses 1 to 4 are indeed fallen angels. While this does not settle the debate, there is a strong contextual, grammatical, and historical basis for believing that Genesis 6 verses 1 to 4 describes fallen angels mingling with human females. So, what is the connection between the sons of God, who took daughters of men, and fathered the Nephilim and the Watchers? To grasp this relationship better, we will explore the book of Enoch, specifically Enoch 6, which offers crucial insights into how it all began and the rebellion of the Watchers. A long time ago, when humans were increasing in number on Earth, the world was full of life, and the population grew. Among these humans were the daughters of men, beautiful women whose appearance captivated not only humans, but also the divine beings known as the Watchers. The Watchers were a group of angels, sent by God to oversee and guide humanity, ensuring that they followed a righteous path. But as they observed the beauty of the human women, some of the Watchers developed forbidden desires. They began to lust after these women, a thought that should never have crossed their divine minds. The book of Enoch describes this moment when their thoughts turned sinful. And it came to pass when the children of men had multiplied that in those days were born unto them beautiful and comely daughters. And the angels, the children of heaven, saw and lusted after them, and said to one another, Come, let us choose us wives from among the children of men. And the Watchers were angels, divine beings who knew the laws of heaven and earth. They understood the gravity of what they were about to do. Taking human wives was strictly forbidden. Their role was to watch and protect, not to engage in intimate relationships with humans. Yet, despite knowing the consequences, their lust clouded their judgment. The leader of the rebellious angels was named Shemahaza, also referred to as Simjaza in some translations. He was the one who first voiced the temptation out loud, but he feared that the others might back out, leaving him to bear the full weight of the sin. Shemahaza understood that their actions would bring severe punishment from God, and he did not want to face it alone. He was hesitant, knowing how great the sin would be. So, he tried to ensure that every angel who shared his desire would be fully committed to the plan. He voiced his concern to the group, and Shemahaza, who was their leader, said unto them, I fear ye will not indeed agree to do this deed, and I alone shall have to pay the penalty of a great sin. Shemahaza was essentially saying, I'm worried that if you lose your nerve, I'll be left to face the consequences of this terrible sin on my own. The other angels, already consumed by their own desires, quickly reassured him. They promised that they would not abandon him. To make sure everyone was fully committed, they proposed a binding pact, an oath. This way, none of them could back out once the deed was done. They responded to Shemahaza, saying, and they all answered him and said, Let us all swear an oath, and all bind ourselves by mutual imprecations not to abandon this plan, but to do this thing. This oath was a solemn and irreversible promise. The Watchers, all 200 of them, gathered together and swore a binding oath. Their rebellion was now sealed. No longer were they simply watchers of the earth. They were about to violate the divine order in a way that had never been done before. Once their pact was made, they descended from the heavens to earth. Their landing place became infamous. The summit of Mount Hermon, a great and imposing mountain that would forever be associated with their rebellion. The Watchers, who were meant to stand between heaven and earth as guides and protectors, had crossed a forbidden line. By descending to Mount Hermon, they chose to become participants in the lives of humans in the most intimate and disastrous way possible. This marked the beginning of their downfall. The once pure and divine Watchers, angels who had been given a sacred task, were now bound by their desire for human women. They abandoned their heavenly duties and took wives from among the daughters of men, leading to a chain of events that would bring great suffering to both humanity and themselves. The rebellion wasn't just an act of lust. It was a willful breaking of the divine order, an act of defiance against God's laws. Their decision would soon result in dire consequences for the earth and for the Watchers themselves. But at this moment, they were blinded by their desires. All they could think about was fulfilling their lust by taking human wives and fathering children, a deed that would lead to even greater calamities. Once the Watchers had descended to earth and taken human wives, the world began to change dramatically. What followed was nothing short of disastrous for humanity. The Watchers, once heavenly beings who were supposed to protect and guide, now became the source of great corruption. Their forbidden unions with human women led to the birth of extraordinary offspring, giant, powerful beings who were never meant to exist. These beings were known as the Nephilim, and their presence on earth introduced chaos and destruction. The book of Enoch describes the giants, born from the union of the Watchers and human women, as towering creatures who became a great burden to the world. Their size and strength were far beyond anything humans had ever seen before. At first, They consumed all the food and resources around them. But as their hunger grew, it became impossible for the earth to sustain them. The Nephilim began to turn to darker means of survival, ultimately preying on humans themselves. These giants weren't just physically overwhelming. They were violent and terrifying. They ravaged the land, devouring everything in sight, including livestock, crops, and eventually humans. This led to a world where fear and suffering reigned. People couldn't escape the reach of these monstrous beings, and the peace that once existed between humans and nature began to crumble. But the corruption didn't stop there. The Watchers, as part of their rebellion, began to share secret and forbidden knowledge with humanity. They taught humans things that were never meant to be known, things that God had intentionally kept hidden for the protection of mankind. By revealing these secrets, the Watchers further led humanity astray, corrupting not only their bodies but also their minds and spirits. One of the most notorious Watchers, Azazel, played a particularly harmful role in this corruption. He revealed the secrets of weaponry, teaching men how to craft swords, shields, and armor. Before this, humans lived more peacefully, using simple tools for their survival. But with the knowledge of weapons, humanity began to learn the art of war. Azazel taught them how to fight and defend themselves, but this knowledge inevitably led to conflict, violence, and bloodshed. Neighbor turned against neighbor, and soon the world was engulfed in war. And Azazel taught men to make swords and knives and shields and breastplates, and made known to them the metals of the earth and the art of working them. But Azazel didn't stop at warfare. He also revealed the secrets of vanity and pride, particularly to the women. He taught them how to adorn themselves with precious metals, how to make jewelry, and how to use cosmetics to enhance their beauty. This knowledge introduced a deeper level of corruption, as it led to vanity, selfishness, and obsession with appearances. People began to focus more on outward beauty and material wealth, rather than their inner virtues and connection with God. And there arose much godlessness, and they committed fornication, and they were led astray, and became corrupt in all their ways. The Watchers didn't just teach warfare and vanity. They also shared the secrets of magic, sorcery, and astrology. Humans learned how to read the stars, cast spells, and use plants for dark, magical purposes. These teachings weren't meant to help humanity. Instead, they pushed people further away from God. People began to rely on these forbidden practices to gain power, control, and knowledge, all at the cost of their morality and spiritual purity. Semjaza taught enchantments and root cuttings, Armoros the resolving of enchantments, Barakiel taught astrology, Kokabel the constellations, Ezekiel the knowledge of the clouds, Arakiel the signs of the earth, Shamzil the signs of the sun, and Sarah the course of the moon. Through these teachings, humanity was drawn deeper and deeper into darkness. The Watchers had introduced ideas and practices that caused humans to abandon their faith and trust in God. Instead, they turned to these new, dangerous forms of knowledge in their quest for power and control. As a result, society became more corrupt, selfish, and violent. The harmony that once existed between humans, nature, and the divine was shattered. The giants, the Nephilim, continued to wreak havoc on the world, and humanity, now corrupted by forbidden knowledge, became lost. People no longer lived simple, righteous lives. Instead, they became consumed by war, vanity, and the pursuit of power. The earth, once peaceful, was now filled with violence, bloodshed, and sin. This was how humanity was corrupted. The Watchers, who were meant to watch over and protect, had become the very source of mankind's downfall. Their rebellion had not only led to the creation of destructive giants, but it also introduced dangerous knowledge that pushed humanity further away from God, leading the world into chaos and destruction. As the corruption of humanity worsened, the earth itself could no longer bear the weight of the violence and chaos that had spread across its lands. The once beautiful and balanced world was now overwhelmed by destruction, bloodshed, and suffering. The Nephilim, The giants born from the union of the Watchers and human women were devouring everything in their path, and the humans, who had once lived in harmony, were now consumed by war, greed, and evil. The natural order was broken. The book of Enoch describes this moment when the earth, the living creation of God, began to cry out in distress. The world itself seemed to sense the depth of the corruption that had taken root in both humans and the divine beings who had rebelled. The earth, no longer able to support the wickedness unfolding upon it, began to call out for justice. It was as if the land, the mountains, the forests, and the rivers all joined together in lament, pleading for God to intervene and restore balance. And then the earth laid accusation against the lawless ones. The earth had become a witness to the wrongdoing of the Watchers and their offspring, as well as the sins of humanity. It was groaning under the weight of the destruction brought about by the Nephilim and the teachings of the Watchers. The giants had laid waste to the world, consuming animals, plants, and even humans to satisfy their insatiable hunger. The violence of their existence was a plague upon the earth, and the land could no longer remain silent. The cry of the earth was a powerful one, not just a sound of complaint, but a deep and spiritual cry for help. The land itself had been polluted with blood, and it yearned for justice. The giants, now out of control, were killing indiscriminately, spilling innocent blood, which soaked into the soil. Everywhere, violence and chaos reigned, and the earth, which had once been filled with the beauty of life and creation, was now drenched in the consequences of sin. The cries of the earth reached the heavens, where God and the Archangels heard the suffering of creation. It was not only the humans who were suffering, but also the animals, the plants, and the very ground that had been corrupted by the wickedness of the giants and the knowledge shared by the Watchers. This was not just a human problem. It was a cosmic one. The entire balance of creation was at risk. The Archangels, the loyal servants of God, heard the cry of the earth and saw the devastation unfolding. Among them were Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel, powerful beings who stood close to God and acted as his messengers and warriors. They witnessed the corruption and the violence with deep concern. The suffering of the earth and the cries of its people moved them to action. And then Michael, Uriel, Raphael, and Gabriel looked down from heaven and saw much blood being shed upon the earth, and all lawlessness being wrought upon the earth. And they said one to another, "The earth made without inhabitant cries the voice of their cryings up to the gates of heaven." The archangels realized that something had to be done. The earth was groaning under the weight of sin, and the cries of both humans and creation itself had reached the gates of heaven. It was time for them to bring this injustice before God, the creator of all things, and plead for him to act. They could see that the Nephilim and the Watchers had brought ruin upon the world, and they knew that divine intervention was the only way to stop the spread of wickedness. As they stood before God, the archangels described the full extent of the devastation. They explained how the giants had turned the earth into a place of violence and bloodshed, where lawlessness ruled and innocent lives were being lost. They spoke of the corruption caused by the Watchers, who had broken the laws of heaven by revealing forbidden knowledge to humanity. This knowledge had led to war, sorcery, and sin, and now the whole of creation was suffering as a result. And they said to the Lord of the ages, "Lord of lords, God of gods, King of kings, and God of the ages, the throne of thy glory standeth unto all the generations of the ages, and thy name holy and glorious and blessed unto all the ages. Thou hast made all things, and power over all things hast thou. And all things are naked and open in thy sight, and thou sayest all things, and nothing can hide from thee." Archangels pleaded with God to see the suffering of the earth and to remember his creation. They reminded him of his power and his ability to restore order. They knew that only God could put an end to the corruption brought about by the Watchers and their offspring, and they called on him to take action before the earth was completely consumed by violence and sin. After hearing the cries of the earth and the pleas of the archangels, God decided that it was time to act. The corruption brought about by the Watchers and their offspring, the Nephilim, had spiraled out of control. Violence, chaos, and sin had overtaken the world. The earth could no longer support the wickedness, and all of creation was suffering under the weight of the Watchers' rebellion. These Watchers, once divine beings tasked with guiding and protecting humanity, had broken the sacred laws of heaven. They had descended to earth, taken human wives, and fought the giants who were now wreaking havoc. These acts were unforgivable, and God knew that justice had to be served. God's judgment was swift and decisive. He summoned the Archangel Uriel and instructed him to deliver a message to Noah, the one righteous man in the corrupt world. God warned Uriel of the impending destruction that would come in the form of a great flood, which would cleanse the earth of the wickedness that had overtaken it. But Noah, along with his family, would be spared, as he had remained faithful to God in a time of great sin. However, before the flood could come, there was still the matter of the Watchers themselves. Their rebellion could not go unpunished. God then turned to the Archangel Raphael and gave him a specific task: to bind Azazel, one of the leaders of the Watchers, and cast him into darkness. Azazel had played a major role in spreading sin and chaos by teaching humanity forbidden knowledge. He had taught men the secrets of weapon-making and war, leading to endless bloodshed. For his crimes, Azazel was to be cast into the depths of the earth, never to see the light again. And again the Lord said to Raphael, "Bind Azazel hand and foot and cast him into the darkness, and make an opening in the desert, which is in Dudiel, and cast him therein, and place upon him rough and jagged rocks, and cover him with darkness, and let him abide there forever." But Azazel wasn't the only Watcher to face judgment. Shemahaza, the leader of the Watchers who had led the others in their rebellion, also had to be held accountable. Shemahaza and the other fallen angels had not only taken human wives, but had also taught humanity secret knowledge that corrupted their minds and spirits. For this, God ordered the Archangel Michael to imprison them as well. Michael, known as the Great Warrior of God, was tasked with binding Shemahaza and his fellow Watchers. Like Azazel, they were to be cast into the depths of the earth, where they would be imprisoned until the day of final judgment. Their punishment was to be harsh and eternal. These once divine beings, who had once walked among the stars, were now condemned to darkness and isolation. And to Michael God said, "Go, bind Shemahaza and his associates who have united themselves with women, so as to have defiled themselves with them in all their uncleanness. And when their sons have slain one another, and they have seen the destruction of their beloved ones, bind them fast for 70 generations in the valleys of the earth, till the day of their judgment and of their consummation." The Nephilim, the giants who had once roamed the earth, were also judged. God called upon Gabriel, another mighty archangel. He commanded Gabriel to act decisively. God's plan was to turn the Nephilim against one another, to cause them to fight among themselves, thus leading to their own destruction. This would ensure that the giants would not only be punished for their sins, but would also eliminate each other in their greed and thirst for power. Then, the skies darkened. Rain began to fall. Not the gentle rain that nourishes crops, but a torrential downpour that came with the fury of divine judgment. The floodwaters rose, sweeping across the land, swallowing cities, mountains, and all the life that had been corrupted. The giants, with all their strength, could not withstand the might of the flood. The Nephilim were wiped out, their massive bodies disappearing beneath the waves. As the waters continued to rise, the rest of humanity, those who had followed the ways of the Watchers and embraced wickedness, was also washed away. The earth was being cleansed as God had promised, and soon only Noah and his family remained, floating safely in the ark. For days, the rain continued and the waters covered everything. It was a time of purging, of washing away all that had gone wrong since the Watchers had descended to earth and led humanity astray. The judgment of the Watchers had come to pass, and now the earth was being renewed, prepared for a fresh start. Inside the ark, Noah and his family waited. They could hear the storm raging outside, but they were safe, knowing that God had chosen them to rebuild the world. As the waters began to recede, hope returned. The flood had served its purpose. God's judgment had been executed, and the world would soon be reborn. The Watchers, however, remained imprisoned, their judgment not yet complete. Though their influence had been wiped from the earth, they awaited the final day when they would stand before God and receive the ultimate punishment. For now, they were trapped in darkness, knowing that they would never again rise to power, never again walk among the stars as they once had. The story of the Watchers' rebellion, the destruction they caused, and their final judgment would forever be remembered, a warning to all of creation about the consequences of defying God's will. Thank you for watching. Today, we talked about angels and Nephilim. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more interesting topics. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so leave a comment below about what you think of angels and Nephilim. Until next time, keep looking for the truths in the scriptures